Subscribe to Cheating Truth Lab right now. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss a story. Now, let's begin. The house stood completely dark and silent when Eric Mackenzie finally pulled his truck into the driveway at exactly 300 hours. His deployment had been cut short 3 days early after an unexpected diplomatic resolution that nobody in his unit had anticipated. He had immediately caught the first transport flight out of Kabul. The entire journey back had been brutal. 16 exhausting hours of flying, another 2 hours of processing at Fort Bragg, and then a long 9-hour drive through the night to reach his quiet rural home in Pennsylvania. Bone-deep tiredness weighed heavily on every part of his body, yet the single thought of seeing his daughter Emma's precious face again had kept him wide awake and alert through every single mile and every single hour of the trip. 6 long months. That was how much time he had been gone on this latest deployment. Emma had turned 7 years old while he was away, and he had missed her birthday by almost 2 full weeks. That heavy guilt had eaten at him constantly during every patrol, every dangerous mission, and every quiet night under the stars. But this time, everything was different. This deployment marked the end of his service. He had already submitted all his retirement papers. After 12 hard years as a ranger, Eric Mackenzie was finally coming home for good, ready to be the father he had always wanted to be. He killed the engine of the truck and sat there motionless for several long moments, simply savoring the peaceful stillness that surrounded him. There were no mortar exploding in the distance, no sudden bursts of gunfire. Only the soft chirping of crickets and the gentle sound of wind rustling through the tall pine trees. The house looked almost exactly the same as he had left it months earlier. Those blue shutters that Brenda had insisted on installing still framed every window beautifully. The flower boxers beneath them now appeared sad and empty, the plants long dead in the late autumn chill. The old tire swing still hung quietly from the thick branch of the big oak tree in the front yard, moving ever so slightly in the night breeze. Eric reached over, grabbed his heavy duffel bag, and walked quietly toward the front door. He wanted this homecoming to be a complete and wonderful surprise for his wife and daughter. Brenda was probably fast asleep upstairs by now, but he hoped that maybe little Emma had woken up from one of her nightmares and was waiting for comfort. Just like she used to do when she was smaller, crawling into bed with him for safety and warmth. The mere thought of that brought a soft, tired smile to his face. Yet the very first thing that immediately felt wrong was the front door itself. It was unlocked. He had reminded Brenda hundreds of times over the years to always lock every door and window, especially when he was deployed far away. Eric pushed the door open very slowly, his elite ranger training automatically taking full control of his movements and senses. Inside the house, the silence felt too heavy and unnatural. It was not the calm, peaceful quiet of a family sleeping soundly. Something else lingered in the air, something tense and deeply disturbing. He moved carefully through the living room. Dirty dishes still sat piled up in the kitchen sink. Pieces of unopened mail lay scattered across the countertops. Brenda's purse rested abandoned on the table. He climbed the stairs slowly, placing each foot with deliberate care. The door to their master bedroom stood wide open. There was Brenda, sprawled across the bed, still wearing the same clothes she had worn that day, one arm hanging lifelessly. Off the edge, an empty wine bottle stood on the nightstand. Eric's jaw tightened noticeably as he absorbed the sight. Without wasting another second, he moved straight to Emma's room. He pushed open the door, that was still decorated with the colorful princess stickers she had excitedly picked out herself right before he left for deployment. The bed was neatly made. Her beloved stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hopper's, the one she had slept with every single night since she was 2 years old, was missing. Her small shoes were not in their usual place by the door. A cold wave of dread washed over him instantly. In 3 fast strides, Eric was back inside the master bedroom. He shook Brenda's shoulder harder than he had meant to. She woke up with a sudden start, her eyes unfocused and confused. "Eric? What? You're not supposed to be here yet. Where's Emma?" She blinked several times, trying to process what was happening. "What time is it? Where is our daughter?" His voice came out completely flat and tightly controlled. The exact same calm tone he always used in the field when a mission started going wrong and panic could get people killed. "I didn't get any email," Eric replied firmly. "Why is she at your mother's at 3 o'clock in the morning?" Brenda sat up slowly in bed and ran her hands through her messy hair. "She's been there since Tuesday. Mama's been watching her while I had some things to handle. Just work stuff. That's all." Eric stared directly at his wife. In 12 years of marriage, he had learned how to. It was a vital survival skill he had developed. And right now, every single instinct inside him was screaming loudly that something was terribly wrong. Brenda would not meet his eyes. Her hands were shaking noticeably, and it was clearly not just from being woken up suddenly. "I'm going to get her right now," Eric said, already moving toward the door. "Eric, it's the middle of the night." Brenda protested, but he ignored her and headed down the stairs, out the front door, and straight into his truck. Brenda's mother, Myrtle Savage, lived roughly 40 minutes away, deeper into the remote mountainous region. The older woman had never liked him, and the feeling had always been strongly mutual. She was a hard, cold woman whose personality seemed untouched by any warmth, even during the freezing Pennsylvania winters. She ran some kind of retreat center on her large property that she proudly called religious counseling and spiritual guidance. Eric had always privately thought of it as nothing more than a clever grift. The roads were completely empty at this hour. Eric drove the truck much faster than he should have, taking the sharp mountain curves with precision and focus. His hands stayed steady on the wheel, but his mind raced ahead with worry and suspicion. Emma had been staying there since Tuesday for several days already. Why had Brenda never mentioned it during their last video call? Why had she sent their daughter away without saying a single word? Myrtle's property sat far back from the main road at the end of a long, winding gravel driveway that led up to a large, sprawling old farmhouse. Bright lights were still burning inside the house. That was the second clear warning sign that something was not right. Nobody should be up and active at this time of night. Eric parked quickly, got out of the truck, and started walking toward the front door. Before he could even reach the porch, the door opened. Myrtle Savage stood there in the doorway, backlit by the harsh interior lights. She was a tall, rail-thin woman, with gray hair pulled back into a severe bun. She wore a long nightgown and carried an expression that might have looked like concern on anyone else's face. But on hers, it appeared cold and calculating. "Eric," she said, "Brenda called and told me you were coming. Emma is sleeping. You really shouldn't be here right now." He pushed past her without hesitation. The inside of the house smelled strongly of bleach mixed with something else underneath, something organic and deeply wrong. "Emma," he called out loudly. "You'll wake the other children," Myrtle said sharply behind him. Eric stopped suddenly. "What other children?" "I run a special program here," Myrtle answered. "For troubled children. Their parents send them to me for strict discipline and spiritual guidance." He had known vaguely about the program before, but had never paid it much attention. Now, staring into Myrtle's cold eyes, a deep, icy feeling settled heavily in the pit of his stomach. "Where's Emma?" he demanded again. "She's in the backyard getting some reflection time," Myrtle replied. Eric was already moving before she finished the sentence. He walked quickly through the kitchen, pushed open the back door, and stepped out into the dark yard that stretched far toward the surrounding woods. In the moonlight, he could see several small structures that looked like sheds or outbuildings scattered across the property. Emma's powerful voice echoed off the trees. Then he heard it, a small, heartbreaking sound of soft crying. He ran toward the sound, pulling out his phone and turning on the flashlight. The beam of light caught something that made him stop dead in his tracks. There was a hole dug deep into the ground, about 4 feet deep and 3 feet wide. Standing inside that cold, muddy hole, shivering violently in her thin pajamas, was his little daughter, Emma. "Daddy." Her voice came out so small and broken. Eric jumped down into the hole in seconds and lifted her out, holding her tightly against his chest. She felt ice cold. Her pajamas were soaked through with mud and heavy dew. She wrapped her arms desperately around his neck and refused to let go. "I've got you, baby. I've got you now," he whispered repeatedly, his voice thick with emotion. He quickly removed his own jacket and wrapped it warmly around her small, trembling body. "How long have you been out here, sweetheart?" "I don't know. Grandma said bad girls have to sleep in graves. She told me I needed to learn. I needed to learn how to be good." She started sobbing uncontrollably now, the words barely coherent through her tears. White-hot rage flooded through Eric's entire body, but he forced himself to stay calm for her sake. Emma needed him steady and strong right now. Get her warm and safe first. Then he would deal with Myrtle. "Daddy, please don't look in the other hole," Emma whispered fearfully against his chest. "Please don't look." He turned anyway and swept the flashlight beam across the yard. She nodded against him and squeezed her eyes shut. He had to know exactly what he was dealing with. Using one hand while still holding Emma securely with the other, he pulled the boards aside. The horrible smell hit him immediately, decay, damp earth, and strong chemicals. The light revealed small bones, a child's skull, scraps of fabric. Pushing the horror aside so he could function professionally. This had now become a major crime scene. He carried Emma back toward the house, holding her close. Myrtle was waiting calmly in the kitchen, holding a cup of tea as if this was a completely normal visit. She's just being dramatic. It was only an hour. The cold teaches them important lessons. Why don't you sit down? And Eric's voice cut through the air like sharp glass. Don't move. Don't even think about running. He carried Emma straight out to the truck, started the engine, and turned the heater on full blast. She was still shaking violently in his arms. Baby, listen to me. You are completely safe now. I'm taking you somewhere warm and good. Can you tell me who Sarah Chun is? I know, sweetheart. I'm sorry, but I needed to see. Who was she? She was here last year. She was bad too. Grandma said she ran away, but I heard her screaming one night, and then she was gone. His phone and called the one person he trusted, without question. Donald Gillespie answered on the third ring. Gillespie. Doan, it's Eric Mackenzie. Eric, I thought you were still deployed. What's going on? Eric kept watching the house. Myrtle stood at the window, staring out at them. She didn't look worried or scared. She looked angry. Chaos. More police cars arrived with flashing lights. Stories about the holes used for punishment. About beatings. Investigators later uncovered 3 additional graves on the property. Eric remained sitting in his truck the entire time, holding Emma wrapped warmly in blankets. Myrtle was arrested, still loudly claiming she had only been helping troubled children, that all the parents had signed legal contracts, and that her methods were simply strict, but legal discipline. Donald approached him as dawn broke. Help. Need full statements from you and Emma soon, but not today. The story that began with Eric's surprise early return home quickly grew into something much larger and darker. Eric spent countless hours digging deeper, uncovering years of hidden abuse, financial trails, but the fight for truth and justice continues. Section below. If you enjoyed this powerful story, please subscribe to Cheating Truth Lab, give the video a thumbs up, and click on the next recommended video you see on the screen. I will see you in the next one.